Now, when it comes to making a list of things that could kill you in the world of Subnautica, what would usually come out on top is something that is large and has a mouthful of sharp teeth, thirsting for your blood and destroying your sea moth. And yet, when it comes to the number one most dangerous thing in the world of Subnautica, it is something so microscopic that you can't even observe it directly and you can only see its effects. That thing will be the topic of today's video, being of course the Kharaa Bacterium, an infection that has not only killed hundreds of billions of individuals since the time of its discovery, but is also responsible for largely decimating the ecosystem of the planet that Subnautica takes place on. Now, as with all of the other videos, I need to preface this by saying that this might contain spoilers to the main story of Subnautica, so if you haven't had the chance to experience it for yourself and you don't want to have any of it spoiled, I strongly recommend clicking off the video and coming back later. Now, with that out of the way, hop into the water, make sure you bring your enzymes though, and let's go. Now, to start us off, as already mentioned, Kharaa is an alien bacterium which originally was discovered by the precursor race during an exploration of an unknown planet somewhere out in the world. Ever since its discovery, it has spread through the precursor worlds, having, according to their databank, killed 143 billion individuals by the time of recording, with those being only confirmed deaths, seemingly implying that the number of actual victims is even higher. As the individual planets and worlds got infected, the precursors quarantined them off, constructing research facilities on all of them, similar to the one on planet 4546b, the one where the player crashes, hoping to find a cure and by extension save themselves and all of the other worlds. Now, as we know from the information in the disease research facility, upon bringing this bacterium to our planet, everything seemed just fine and dandy and contained until a sea dragon leviathan attacked the base, hoping to rescue its offspring, causing major structural damage and leakage to the containment of said bacterium, causing it to spread out and devastate the entire ecosystem. This disaster prompted the precursors to initiate their emergency quarantine, activating the large alien weapon which eventually shoots down both Sunbeam, Aurora, and Degassi, and then supposedly dying off. In order to keep the levels of spreading with this bacterium to a minimum, the warpers were constructed, as mentioned in their own video, which you can watch by the way, to help combat any creatures that are already infected and thus slow down or even prevent further damage to the planet. Now, as soon as the player emerges from their life pod, their PDA will make note of the seemingly high levels of bacterial infection in the water, and as the player progresses further, they learn that Kharaa is very different from any infection already discovered in human history, suggesting that its biological design is much more dangerous and destructive as compared to other diseases we're already dealing with. Okay, but what does this bacterium do? Well, according to the databank entry, it incubates for about 2 weeks and subsequently will very quickly kill its host as it spreads through the body, causing genetic corruption, shutting down the immune system, and altering the entirety of that specimen's body structure, which eventually leads to a complete shutdown of all integral life functions in said creature. From the precursor's research, we can gather that the bacterium is capable of entering the body through the skin or any other open orifice, and in some cases might cause increased aggression in certain infected species. Once a creature is infected, this virus will slowly manifest itself over the said 2-week duration in a form of bright green cysts concentrated around the place of initial infection, with similarly colored veins escaping them, which progressively get larger and larger, signifying that said creature is close to death. Now, obviously, all of this sounds quite terrifying, but the reason why it's so crucial to the main story of Subnautica is because the player themselves get infected with Kharaa almost immediately upon arriving at the planet, even though they only technically learn about it while attempting to disable the quarantine enforcement platform that no infected individual can disable, forcing the player to look for a way to cure themselves and by extension escape the planet. Upon reaching the disease research facility, the main protagonist will be prompted to perform a self-scan via their PDA, at which point the infection is supposedly reaching critical stage. Interestingly enough, Riley Robinson is not the only human individual in the world of Subnautica to have suffered from this disease, as supposedly the Degassi survivors were also at one point infected, with Marguerite constantly bringing new specimens to Bart for research and study with the hope of him finding a cure, which unfortunately, as we now know, never happened. Now, interestingly enough, there is one more person who suffers a very similar fate, that being the medical officer Danby in LifePod 12. However, something quite curious about this case is that, unlike Riley, this person developed visible signs of the infection already within 3 hours after being exposed, and supposedly died very shortly after. Now, while the exact cause as into why the progress of the infection was so drastically different between him and our main protagonist is currently unknown, chances are it's because Riley has already been exposed to quite a large amount of the unstable variation of enzyme 42 before being ultimately cured. Well, as it stands right now, there is only one known cure to the Kharaa Bacterium, that being said enzyme 42, which is only produced by sea emperor leviathans. Now, unfortunately, the only adult specimen of this creature has, because of its health, been unable to produce any more of this enzyme, forcing the player to create hatching enzymes, hatch the juveniles, and use the enzymes created by them to cure themselves. Upon coming in contact with the enzyme, all of the effects of the bacterium are seemingly reversed, and it is then purged from the system for good. Now, as already mentioned in both the Sea Emperor and the Peeper video, the adult Emperor Leviathan was still able to produce an imperfect version of enzyme 42, which was distributed throughout the planet via peepers. However, this form of the enzyme would not cure the virus, it would only postpone its effects by a little bit. Now, essentially, that is all of the information we have about the Kharaa virus. However, there are a few more interesting points of trivia and a few tidbits that we can go into just to top this video off. If a player were to place an infected creature within the aquarium or the alien containment, that creature will eventually infect all of the other creatures in the area, even though that is purely a cosmetic effect and does not influence the gameplay. In Mongolian, which is the supposed origin for the Aurora ship, Kharaa means curse or to curse, which after explaining the symptoms of this disease sounds like a pretty fitting name to me. Funny enough, in the earlier game script, Kharaa was actually a bacterium developed by the precursors. And finally, even though it might sound absolutely terrible and terrifying, and might prompt you to really hurry up when looking for the enzymes, the stages of player infection are purely dependent on your pace of exploration, and there is in fact no way to essentially die from the infection or get to further stages of it without progressing with the story. So I suppose in the end, that Reaper which is lurking right behind your Seamoth right now might still be a bigger threat than the Kharaa Bacterium. But anyways, that is all of the information I was able to gather on this terrible disease, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video and maybe you learned something new along the process. If you did, maybe consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All of those would be very much appreciated. And if there is any fact that you think I missed or a request for a future lore video, make sure to leave those down in the comments below. I would very much love to read them. With that, I want to wish you a beautiful rest of the day, and I'll see you in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.